Hey guys, this is me and Chris and George. And this week we're going to go over the even game that George and I did where he trounced me. Take it away, Chris.
Alrighty. So yeah, this is my first time I think doing one of like the game reviews like this on this channel. So I'll do my best. Already, it's pretty interesting. We have cross opening. This is still seen sometimes, but very rare in modern Go to see this Fuseki these days. Was this just something like you wanted to switch it up, George, or is this like what you're normally playing now, or?
It's not what I'm normally playing. I guess we switched it up. Yeah.
Okay. Because White offered it, you accepted this time. So.
Yeah. I guess usually when I'm offered it, I accept it. Almost always.
Right. Yeah. I know the thinking.
Nothing wrong with it, right?
No. AI sort of kind of has one of two ways of looking at it, from what I understand. The old professional thinking used to be that. Because it becomes more of a territorial fighting game, it was slightly favored for White in formats with high komi. So like Ing Cup with an 8 komi, or like Chinese rules with 7.5 komi. Players typically don't play the cross Fuseki as Black because there was this feeling that on average White would win more in a territory fighting game. But the AI says while that's true to some degree, it's still close to 50-50. So there's really no big reason not to do it. I like White's choice to split here. This is quite natural. Of course, White could do something more conservative. Diagonal is also possible. If Black simply takes the 2-space extension, relationship with Black's corner is not the best. White can still come in, for example, this attachment later and break it, or the same approach that White did. Many methods, almost nothing can be bad in the opening, but I like that White is playing for speed. And then here, instead of answering, George also plays for speed and goes after the corner, which I think is quite good too. A lot of players might be afraid to do this, leaving the 2, 3, 4 points kind of unattended, not taking the next move. But the idea that I found with this is usually if White takes the next move in one, Black can take the next move in the other. So it's like a Miai.
Yeah.
One
thing about this position, instead of that, have Black play press at Q5 twice, and then again, and then the pinch. Let's make it H4.
Yeah.
Now, there's something very natural about this.
Yes. Very active way to play for Black. I like it.
Now, I would assume the board is still equal. Would we just say that, how would you phrase it? Because everyone's thinking, oh, this is better for Black. Now we know it's not. How would you phrase it?
I think it's more dynamic for Black than what Black chose. But in general, the way that I kind of feel about these active A moves is that the burden to prove their value is on the person that plays them. So H4 inherently doesn't give Black anything at the bottom outside of an extension from the wall and some control. There's no territory there. So Black is going to have to prove through the course of attacking White that A stone is useful after he plays it. And so because Black has that burden of proof on him, it's easier for White to play. All White has to do is settle or play some big point and say, Black, okay, it's your job to make A worth the whole move.
Interesting. I would have thought the other way, that it's White's burden to make sure Black doesn't get carried away there.
Yeah, and maybe that comes from my own propensity to be able to break big moyos. I'm not really scared of Black trying to go too hard. For me, I just see it as it's okay. It's one high White stone. It's got access to the center. It's quite light.
Okay.
So it's very hard for me to believe that the E4 stone's in severe danger. I would think the pinch would be a little more severe if the stone was at E3. Because then now when Black covers from like E5, for example, let's just change up the board a little bit. This stone is going to have a harder time escaping if Black gets to play the next move. For example, Black can think about something like this. This would be a more severe attack in combination with the pinch. But because the stone is high, it's got pretty clean direction to the center at B. Like Black can't really separate in one move. It can still go to the corner. It can move towards the side. White can do some type of repinch at E, treat the stone lightly. It's a little bit more difficult for black to convince me that the white stone is going to have any severe attack against it that I need to care about anyway.
Okay, thanks.
So this is sort of the small differences between the third and fourth line in the opening and the middle game. Something that strong players will usually have like a natural attunement to. They sort of recognize that fourth line means easier access to the center, often means the stone is lighter, harder to attack. But I think the press is still a really good move. This is kind of like a stylistic choice because black has a lot of things. Like black could play a catch and take territory. This is another common move.
Cash, that's nice.
Yeah, a white can play a pinch extension combination. For example, this one would be sort of common in games from the late 90s, early 2000s. And black could still do the press. And there's nothing wrong with this. It's also even and still a game. The only question that's left over after this one is how useful is the wall at A and how efficient is the step at B? And that's sort of the conversation that comes after this position. But black can do anything. And I think black playing for C, this is a very modern move. And it's sort of observing the Mii of the two corners. Right. And I like that. It's very like professional feeling type move where it's like you're not in a rush to do anything. Your opponent can make the first move and we can still expect an even result. Okay, and then white can honestly block anywhere. This is fine. And white chose to go for territory, which I think is also okay.
I never do that. It's like the first time I've done it in ages and upon ages.
So I know sometimes AI doesn't necessarily give double Hane a good score, but when the wall is not particularly impressive, then usually white switching to the corner is fine, I think. If white thought that there was going to be a good wall, white might choose to block this way and then go for some outside attack or maybe something like this or something like this one. But I like the block into double Hane personally. I think white taking territory is fine here. And now for black, though, this is going to be an interesting point because now A is somewhat useful for black as an answer to white's approach move. So settling the top left corner here for black sort of gave you a next move naturally. I'm not sure I would have played this one. And the only reason that I say this, George, is because this wall is not a whole value wall for white.
Okay, so the RG.
Yeah, because later black has this into this, and black can settle the top side quite easily. It's very hard for white to use the corner to attack right now. So even if white, like let's say black plays away, even if white does get some type of combination in the corner here, where white is very strong, black's playing away is quite big, and then later black can still fire this invasion and settle the top side quite easily. So I don't think we have to rush to enclosing the star point. I think probably something like A, B, or C would be more accurate in the opening at this point. And I like that white immediately sort of comes back to this move, sort of punishing black for not taking this spot in the corner first. And then Tanuki again. Wow, George is brave.
Yeah, this was starts using his Shamari on top. Yeah, I liked it.
I think a lot of players would sort of very casually play something like this and try to settle the group. And I don't think it's bad to do this for players maybe like 3Q and below. I think this is standard and probably an easy way to play. But when you start getting to higher levels, it's good to recognize what you're giving to the opponent, because now white can think about things like this pinch, white can think about things like this pinch, and all of these moves are going to be supported by the fact that white has this extra elevated strength in the bottom left corner. Eventually, white's either going to get a nice moyo from the attack, or black is going to have to break the bottom side, which is going to give white power towards the center.
Yeah.
So once we sort of realize that there's a con attached to this for black, we have to evaluate if that's a future black likes. I think higher levels, we can think about ignoring this move, specifically because we have the thickness at A. Looks like somebody already marked that in the SGF, but the fact that A is thick and very resilient to attack makes the B stone inherently less valuable to save. If white captures the B stone, spending too many moves, the future against A isn't that much better. So Tanuki seems perfectly fine.
It felt a bit. It didn't feel quite right me settling a group at B because of my thickness at A.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
And so I like your pincer. I think you can also consider to pincer this way. This one's also just iffy. And this is just kind of asking to white, how do you want to fix the aji at the corner? Black is preparing, for example, cut at A. And white could pull back at A. But then if we look at the shape, the stone here is in a bit of a weird spot now. So this exchange would become good for black. And if white, for example, plays something like this one, which is another common follow-up, take a liberty, black is able to extend. And then after something like this, we can see that the white group is actually not alive in the corner now. White would need one more move, something like this, to make a living shape. If black gets to block at b4, white is dead locally as it stands. So this will have some troubles for white. So this is a good one to remember in shapes like this. Normally, when none of the corner blocks are good for white, white will switch and play the pinch at c6. And so this is a third direction white can go to kind of settle the area, and black can play anywhere from there. Okay, so we got this one. Using A, I liked it. And white comes out very thickly. This is a good move too. White has the choice to play fast, but this one has the bit of bad feeling attached to it. We're helping black get stronger.
Thought, yeah.
This one is reserving that exchange. And so maybe later, if white can get a jump at A, white can also get a press at B. And this sort of A-B combination is good for keeping the right side in check. So I really like this. Taking a base is fine, but I think directionally, George, jumping is better.
That's what AI was suggesting, yeah.
And it's, again, it comes back to the same thing. When you play something like this and white is able to press, like, bully you for free, then white can do something like this press from the center or, like, cover from above. And it keeps the right side very small, very low. It's going to make it hard for you to really express the influence of Eurogame here in a positive sort of attacking initiative way. White's always going to be outside of you, kind of smothering your influence.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, locally, I can't say it's bad. It's preventing a white pincer, which is fine. But in general, I don't think we're afraid of this in such positions, because once you're elevated, you can just come out. So it's kind of like white could jump, but then black could just push and fly. And you're keeping a lot of sente pressure against white by having this key point today. So it's this one, and then white played, yeah, press, and then extend, and then you chose to extend backwards. This one's a bit of a rare move.
Yeah, I've never seen it before. I had no idea how to continue here.
Yeah, so normally it's A or B. For black, they both kind of sort of do the same thing. With A, it's really hard for white to find a good push and cut. If white does cut and play like this, white has to read, can white actually catch black at the corner? If white can catch, then white can play this way, but the outside aji is terrible. With the jump cut, black is getting many liberties, and then p5 becomes a pretty big weakness. And if white defends the center, for example, something tight like this, then it's already a good exchange for black. Black can fly back to the corner or something like this now, and you're getting a little bit more out of it than q3. Q3 is on a shape point. White can simply block. I think with this move, it's already good for white, because white is now creating a stable shape at the corner. Aside from the block, what else can white do? I mean, white could answer with push at B, that's sente. White can cover at C, that's big. White can press at D, that's big. Probably one of these four would be the choices I would look at. All right, pinch. I like the pinch. Very active move. White is not afraid to fight with black here. White has the wall. Yeah, this one is another move white can also play. This one's a bit more, it's less in your face confrontational, but it holds more control at the center for white. But maybe
back, I think I would play that way.
Yeah, I think it's certainly easier for white to play this way. But I don't think that this one is a mistake. I think this one's like, this is maybe a good time to sort of talk about the divide between new school and old school thinking, because I think that's really where A and B sort of stem from. A is a very modern move. Some players played it back in the day as well, like Choyan would play it a lot. Players like Li Changho would use it a lot, these sort of restrictive developing moves rather than the direct attacking move. And more fighting players, which was the majority of the Go playing professional population back then, would play B almost exclusively. I don't think either are wrong, but B is going to have a lot more burden on white, whereas A is going to have a lot more burden on black. Because when you're making the attacking claim, you have to actually prove that your attack is valuable. So, like something like this, if I'm black, I'd probably just give up the 1 stone. But George, you chose to attack and fight. I think this is or attach and fight, I should say. I think this is a really sharp move. It's a very high level move, not backing away. This one is a very easy move, but it's soft. If white gets to play this one next, white actually gains something from the exchange, right? Because it's like white pressed at A and then you flew to B and then white got to cut the stone off at C. And black doesn't really have a good follow-up. But your move is generating good follow-ups, so I like this. This is a very
bothered me.
Sharp play. Yeah. And then connecting, yep, connecting is fine. White could also consider going here. And then the other move, the one that I see AI recommend a lot, is white can extend to this one as well. And this one is one that we didn't see a lot in professional games back in the day, but I've seen a lot recently in the last few years. It's really, really good when white wants to keep spatial control towards the center. It's actually better than Tiger's Mouth for that. And black still can't cut at R10. So when having center control to continue staying ahead of black is good, then white can continue with 11. Like this. Okay, black jumps. Jumping is quite stable. I think it's okay. If black wanted to play perhaps a little more actively, then black could consider being more aggressive with the Hane. George?
Yes, I actually looked at this and AI was suggesting this move.
This cut is not impressive because at any point you have moves like this one or this one, which bother white's shape at the corner and extract your group. It's hard for white to rescue the cutting stone in a way that's going to feel good for white. So if white can only answer with something like counter Hane or jump, then I think the Hane is going to be much more powerful than playing this one and allowing white to have an extension in the future. So this one is okay. I think it's fine. White jumped, taking the base. This is natural. And then black turns. This is also quite powerful. The turn is actually incredibly sharp here because white hasn't added a stone at A yet. And so because white doesn't have A, black still has moves like 1 in the future to get some extra profit on the bottom side for free. So I like the direction of your turn. I think a lot of players, like higher level players, I think the first instinct is going to be we either play A or we play B or we do something at C. At least these are my instincts. And the reason is these are the ones that sort of keep tempo against white by pressing on white's shape quite a bit. L4 keeps tempo against the bottom group, but it's a bit self-harming with the center. You're encouraging white to take a vital point. So like, for example, you turn, white jumps. Now white has broken your leaning table, so white's extension of P10, for example, becomes a real threat now because your natural defense is gone. So this exchange is actually useful for white on the right side, this A for B, and some small degree. But I do think that that tiny little help that we give white is maybe not as valuable as the territory on the bottom. These types of things are a bit hard to calculate. Like during the game, it's really hard to judge. My impression is A, B, or C would probably be the most accurate here. If we play A, we're asking white pretty much to go towards the corner again. We want to either see, like, white could concentrate like this, but this would be not great. Normally, white would want to slide or move out to center if white's going to answer again. And this exchange cleans up black's shape a lot. So now when you turn is much more powerful. White's jump doesn't have any additional help. And black would be able to continue pressing white many different ways. For example, you've got to press here. You've got to jump here. You've got a lot of things you can do. If we
What
play
about,
B...
what about white breaking the tiger's mouth instead of playing that? Because I guess white can get that in center.
If white breaks it, it's self-hurting for white in the corner. Because black can answer with the leaning table, or black can answer with this elephant jump to space extension. The threat of white to cut is not really a real threat on the board when white is about to be dead in the corner. So it's like a danger level thing. Can white try it? Maybe, but white's going to lose more than white gains in most cases. So I agree with Lance's decision not to exchange it yet. I like that he's going for the base first. I think the base first here is correct for white. But I think for black, we can be just a little bit more active. Okay. And then I like that white defended. Black got back to this one. This is good. And then white.
But then, oh, okay. I guess because white defended, now that would be a beneficial move for white because my response won't be hurting that group. So now it's good timing for me to play.
Yeah, exactly. Because now if we skip it, for example, we block the corner, white's extension is going to be not a bad move anymore. Yeah.
True.
So we played this one, and then Lance defended in the corner. Is the right side deserving of a move more than the bottom right corner? I think my first impression here would be to fly. And then the only reason that I think about this one is because if black attacks the corner, for example, something like this, we can block, push, and then like escape somehow. If white's right side group begins running towards the center, maybe when we just extend, A is going to keep some pressure on B long term because the black B group isn't alive yet.
This is, I purposely did not play around A because I didn't see it doing anything. And I still don't. You say, oh, long-term, bother black. That seems so weak to me.
Yeah, it's not a very strong idea at the present moment, but I think black has more that black can do against the bottom right that's going to impact the strength of the center than he's going to do against the right side.
Yeah, and if he surrounds them on the outside, that's thick for him on the outside. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But then it's strange
because I didn't want to go slow, but it seems so slow.
It is a bit slow because it takes a while for white to catch up the attack on the right side. It's like not it's a case of like white doesn't really have the right to attack that group yet. But at some point, as the game goes on, black will have to address that group doesn't have two eyes. It might take 20, 30, 40, 50 moves to get to that point. But at some point, black will need to add moves to it.
Okay. It's strange because white defended at R3, and then black defended, and then white comes out after he's defended and his opponent's defended. It seems strange.
Yeah. Well, the defense makes the corner alive, but it doesn't directly address A. There's still a weakness at the A point here. So if we imagine like black getting to this move, if white has to connect back and Gote, this is only a net positive exchange for black. White didn't gain anything. But meanwhile, black gained eye space for the group in the center, and when black jumps, black is going to have really thick control here. So it's big as a reverse type of move. When white takes this, black is losing a lot of the value of that 06 exchange. Black might still be able to play it as some method to force white to connect in the future. But even that is not certain because if white has access to the center, white might allow black to cut if the corner's already alive.
Yeah.
So it changes a lot of the conversation around that 06 point. And these are often like points in the middle game that are very hard to judge. I could be completely wrong about it. It's just my impression when I see it. That would be a double check with AI type of thing. Because
that's something I've always found fascinating. You know, I'll say, "Oh, this is such and such." I have no idea. You go check with AI, they go, that's a stupid idea. Like, really?
Yeah.
I
For
would've
me,
sworn.
I mean, yeah, for me, I can only go based on what I see. It's just, to me, like, even though this S16 move is big, and I don't think it could be a mistake per se, black getting S15 versus white getting S16 will be a fairly sizable difference of corner territory, something in the neighborhood of 10 points.
Yeah.
But white is going to be alive regardless. Because black is not alive in the center. If black tried, let's say, for example, black invaded with something like this, this invasion is not actually going to really pressure white all that much, because the minute white starts playing from the outside and gaining strength against black, black is getting weaker, and then the M6 stone value sort of comes into play now. So since we're not worried about R12 being the starting point, the only other starting point we would look at would be if black played something like this or the kick. In both cases, white's going to be able to live quite easily at the right-hand side. So as far as the corner exchange goes, if white's alive anyway, it's just a matter of, are the 10-point difference in endgame the biggest thing we could be doing now? And so is that 10 points bigger than this jump? In which case, I mean, I don't really know, but my impression is I think the jump is slightly more valuable since we're in the middle game and it has middle game meaning. Whoops. So we did this one, and then black answered. Now, I think this answer is a mistake. You've already got a really wide extension, George. Let's talk about how to understand the function of stones. Value of stones are always changing. When you originally played A as a move to block white's influence, you were gaining a lot of influence on your own. And now you're saying, no, I want to take a big territory. These are not really congruent ideas. On this board, the territory that you're keeping in the corner is not really the topic of the conversation. The topic of the conversation is this unresolved question we have around B. If I'm black in this spot, I'm checking white's corner and I'm putting a lot of pressure on my cutting point. The reason it puts pressure on the cutting point is because if this move goes unresolved, the white is not alive locally in the corner anymore. Then the cut becomes severe. So I think black still needs to be playing in this area. This is quite big. And I think that this one is really, really slow. Because this move also doesn't generate a net positive follow-up for you. We can say, okay, white ignores, I can press. But you actually don't need this move in the corner to press. You can press already anyway. In that case, why did we exchange our 17?
And the gain that I get for A being slightly longer than usual is probably very marginal, right?
Well, it means that white's wraparound at R17 in the corner is not Sente. Because one of the benefits is when you ignore this slide and you Tanuki and white goes here, the next move in the sequence from the corner for black is typically to jump to A and be light, treat the cornerstone lightly. Here you have A already in place. So you save a move, right? So then it makes white's follow-up at R17 quite slow.
So in this situation, I'm always very happy to play R17. So I think I'm getting a bigger corner than usual, but actually that's usually not very good thinking, I guess.
No, this is a move that we would that both players are usually going to save for like the stages of Oyose or like big end game, right? It's a very big end game for both, but that's all it is right now. Is end game. Now, if white had already example stone at C, putting pressure on your group, then I could say there might be merit to playing R17 and securing the base. But as of right now, the A stone is your head position, and you can go to the corner, the center, or the side. So your group is in no danger to white slide. There's no reason that black needs to answer here. So
there's no danger if white Tanukis if I protect in the corner and then play R12.
Oh, like this, and then white play away, and then here. No, because then white's still going to play this outside move and use this to bother your group in the center.
Okay.
Yeah, so because this group is not alive yet, and that makes attacking at the right-hand side very difficult for black. Those type of R12 invasions require this group to be like actually thickness to uphold the attack.
And I guess during the attack, white might even sacrifice those two stones.
Yeah.
R14 and S16. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if white surrounds and captures the right side and black captures the two in the corner, it's going to be a net positive for white.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here I think
Nice.
this one that's just a little slow, and then white's Hane is very big Hane. And so white settled, and then black played this and settled. Okay, yeah, this is all fine. I like the distance. I think too far black would have invaded, too slow or too low would have been over concentrated, so nothing to see here. And now this one. This one is a bit soft. Black always has this as black's right. There's almost no reason not to play this way if that's your goal. White invading here would be reckless. I don't think you would see that. I'm pretty sure Lance would play there. So if you want to play on the top side and claim that I'm going to increase my territory and reduce the whole upper area to ruin and ashes, there's no reason not to exchange F8 now. Otherwise, if we're trying to use it to uphold the Aji to make a claim that this push is going to give us grandiose things, then we should just push here and not play for the top at all, because this stone is already quite low and settled. What can white do productively on the upper side anyway?
Yeah, I was just trying to negate white playing L17 and kind of squeezing, but
L17 on its own is Gote. We can look at that for a second here. If white does play this move, again, at any point, you can make these exchanges in their pinch. And now if we look at the Tawari, it's like you did that and then white came in. And then you just spent Tanuki elsewhere, because white's invasion was reckless and not that great. But also, if you don't make those exchanges, if you're worried about the territory, you could just bond. That will remove white's invasion. It's a good exchange for white, but you can still reduce the upper side area. It's not like white's getting a whole lot there. So I don't think we have to worry about this L17 move so much. Okay, so black jumped, and then white slid. I think this is a very sharp move. So you were worried about black S5, Lance?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very, very good timing.
I really didn't like that I wasn't alive here. It bothered me a lot.
Yeah. And I think it's also kind of got this hidden follow-up idea of getting sort of like this this A check and this B descend, which are both good profit moves for white. And it's keeping black in check in the center, because even though it looks like black is okay, white has a peep here, white has an attachment here. Both of these moves are really good for restricting black's eye space in the center.
Yeah.
And so as the conversation on the left side and the upper side develop further, white is going to be trying to move the conversation in a way where it can come back to its right side. White has some interesting Aji here that white can exploit later. And then black is now checking. And so this is one of those interesting cases where I mentioned before that if white is forced to connect on Dame, something like this, then this is going to be a good exchange for black, right? But the problem is we allowed white to get A first, which means the corner's alive. Now white doesn't have to connect. So if black goes through with some type of cutting method, let's just look at this one. White is already out, and white can begin fighting with the black group because the corner is not in danger. This is a fight white is not afraid of. And having a stable group because of A is quite useful, and having B go unanswered is also quite useful.
What's white's next move here?
So in this case, what would be the best move that I could think of for white? My first impression is to just Hane. I think just making shape is fine. I think you can also ask a question to black, since black can't cut.
Okay.
So like, for example, we play this one, he blocks, we go here. Seems okay to me. We're really hurting the eye space. He can cut, but the group locally is only one eye. And if we play like this and connect and then Atari, it seems okay. But white doesn't have to rush to that. I think white can start with this one first, because black always has to worry about white playing A, which is going to be white sent A, and it's quite profitable. His group on the bottom won't be alive after that exchange. So yeah, this looks like a case where white can consider some alternative resistance. Okay. connecting underneath. This one is just sort of doubling down that white is alive, but makes it a little bit easier for black to defend the outside. And then black comes back to this one. Possible, but a little bit, what's the feeling? Like a little bit reserved. Like black can do more. Like you can press, for example, George. If white blocks, you can bump. If white blocks, you can hane. And these exchanges should just be net positive for black if you're trying to defend the left side and grow it. You could also just attach and then extend, for example. Something like this would also be quite good. You still leave this weak point at A behind that you can try to use to bother white later. I mean, white could fix it with a move like this or a jump, but it feels kind of bad to play that just to fix A. So I think kind of with both of these moves in mind, there's almost no reason to play reserved at C. This is where black could take a little bit more initiative. And then this one, I don't like this one. I think this one should be here. And this one might just be a difference of style, but the main reason, Lance, is because you always have this sort of checking idea at A that makes black not alive without having to take go to the corner.
I hated doing it. I don't know what this move is foreign to me. Saying, "Oh, go ahead and cut me. I know I have no base. I know." Blah,
yeah.
Blah. Like, what am I doing?
So Stephanie Yin actually had a lecture kind of covering this, I think, at Go Congress this year. Not really a lecture so much, but she talked about it in the Masters games when one of the co-commentators mentioned something very similar to this, like, oh, can't the shape be cut? And the idea is, yeah, but when you're thinking about cut, you always have to look at the quality of the cut. And so ideally, if black is going to cut at A, or cut it, let's just change up the letters. If black cuts at A, it's only really going to be a great fight if both 1 and 2 are in danger. But the problem is, if the group at 1 is already alive and black doesn't have leverage against it, then white only needs to defend 2, and everybody knows it's much easier to live with the group than it is to kill it. So that's a fight that white is happy to take, because that fight can only be working 50% capacity for black.
I've only got 1 weak group with lots of room. Yeah.
Right. And black is not yet alive on the bottom if white gets K2. Black would have to spend moves in Gote to live. So black is like 1.5 group in the fight, which is worse than white's 1. So this fight should be on paper good for white. I mean, you always have to read and make sure there's no like Tessage or like trick tactic that black can do to capture something, but in this case there isn't one.
And I guess this fight would benefit white because of black's potential moil on the left hand side, and
yes, you're probably right. Your weak group on the right means that the left can't really get out of hand if this fight happens, because white can always prioritize gaining thickness at the center in the fight and use that thickness to erase the left naturally. You know, as far as like territory goes, we can look at the points. Like black has a decent territory here. You can look at something in the neighborhood of probably like this for black's territory there. I think this will probably end up, after black lives, yield maybe 5 or slightly less points. Funiki is a bit hard to count at the moment, but generally that shape gives black about 8 to 10 points. So I'll just count that as something like this. And then this group is, I mean, pretty easily this amount of territory. But when you look at black's points, it's really not a lot, like actual territory that black has if black doesn't take the left-hand side. But meanwhile, we look at white's territory, and like white's territory is, even at the right side, is probably just as much as all of black's territories combined right now. Like this territory for white is gargantuan, and that's not counting the territory white's going to get from capturing the stones in the corner, something like this, or the territory that white's going to get down here on the bottom with this living group, plus combing. I don't know if white had combing, but if white has combing, plus combing. So just from a counting perspective, black would need to make a lot of territories at the right-hand side to keep the game even. If black does not get points at the left-hand side, then white is going to be comfortably winning. And so for white, the mission would become very easy if this fight were to happen. And this one was just a tiny bit slack. In the
a little
sense
more
of,
than a tiny bit.
Yeah. And generally speaking, if we want to like really defend the shape the best way, this one is the better one.
That's true.
But yeah, in general, I think this is a good moment for white to realize, okay, black's cut can only at best be 50% because only one group's in danger. You can jump like white. That's sort of how I think about it. Then black's press was a good move. I like that move.
Was it Sente?
No, not Sente. And the only reason I say it's not Sente is because white can answer with this J2 move, and this one's really annoying for black. Black isn't alive yet.
Okay. Take that off. You say it's not Sente. So white passes anywhere, and black finally gets a turn. Oh, go, put that back.
Oh, I took a Blackstone off. I meant to pass.
Now white goes, okay. F3.
You say F3. Where's F3? This one. Okay. And the question is, what does white do?
Okay, that's a good question. Come on out. G3.
Okay. G3. I'll block. I'm assuming H2 next.
Yeah. I got no eyes, no territory. You know, J3, you know the moves.
Yeah. But are you connecting or capturing?
Connecting.
Okay. Yeah. Connect is fine.
Yeah, N2, you know it. And then anything. Let's just capture it, K.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So he can steal the
no eyes. Black got all the points. White got no. That's a huge move. And I still feel I got no eyes. Black's all around me.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to feel good about this?
Yeah, it's understandable. But you also don't feel good if you answer it. At least like this, you destroy the left, you can still attack the right. I think it's okay.
Okay.
Black's probably slightly better, but in general, the reason I don't think it's Sente is because whenever black plays this press, white can answer sharply with J2, and it's like stealing Sente back from black. Okay. If black plays anything to save, I don't know, I guess this is an active way black can do it. White doesn't have to answer anything anymore. That stops the F3 problem in Sente, and then white can play away. And if black doesn't answer, like let's say black plays anywhere else, let's have black jump, I guess. Seems like a big move. Black's always going to have to deal with the fact that white's got things like this attachment or this sort of push, attach, connect, which are good value, force black to live like this. This type of thing can be quite a bit difficult to handle.
Do you think white should play J2 right away?
I would probably play it here. Just because I think there's a very high likelihood that black is going to answer, and if not, we get a lot of good benefit out of this move. Okay. So to me, it seems like a free exchange. If black fixes any move to fix, then I think white is happy enough that white can go into the left side from now.
Okay.
But okay, so white Tanuki to the turn here. This turn is big. I'm not sure if the turn is better than keeping, but I think there's probably merits, pros and cons to both. Black's extending is natural.
But why the white turn? Because doesn't it just help me in the center?
It does, but it also helps cover white's own weakness at A. And even though it helps,
I went through this with AI, and AI says that black A is a burden for white, and my turn didn't do that much about it. Also says that we're dead even.
Yeah, the game is dead even here for sure. It does offer some support to A, and that
it must too.
The reason that I say it does, let me just pass for white really quick, is because now when black comes in, white can think about playing from the outside. Having more liberties with that stun means that this cut is less of a burden directly to white. Yeah. So it's harder for black to leverage it. So that's the small benefit. But also in this shape in the center, white that breaks black's eye space. So these are things that black has to keep in mind, is that at some point white can make one of these attachments and black is going to lose black's eyes.
Yeah. AI said the same thing that you did, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that the turn is an okay exchange. It does lead black's group out, but it didn't fix the burden of the eye space dilemma that black had here.
Yeah.
The peep does the same thing, and that later white can peep and then play this to break black's eyes as well. So they both have a similar benefit against the eye space, but the problem is one of them makes A slightly worse for black, and one of them makes A slightly better for black. And the peep giving black a very strong shape on the outside makes Q13 slightly better for black. The turn giving black this shape makes A slightly less good for black.
Yeah.
Small difference. But I think it was fine. White did not capture next. That would be a mistake. White pushed again. I don't know if we needed the second one. Probably at this point, I would have played on the left-hand side. I think getting ahead here is probably good. If white can somehow, and this is a bit metagaming, George, because you're still in the low-down Q levels. It's sort of metagaming that players at that level don't really know how to use this shape. White can start by lightly reducing the left, and the main ideas white's going to look for is when white can get to A, white can cut at B, and white can get anything in the center at C for free to bother the left hand or the right hand side while breaking the left. Like, this is the long-term goal. This is probably what I would do in a position like this. Black has a lot to manage. I think as far as like technically correct moves go, I think J2 is still really big. Preventing F3 is nice, and doing it with follow-ups is even better. Makes this move more stomachable for white. It's not so slow. But this one is a bit slow. I don't think black needed to answer. Black did answer, but black could, for example, just immediately go for something like this now. You could play like this one, or go for that F3 idea, or just about anything.
I actually much preferred G3. It didn't really like F3, but it much preferred G3.
And G3 is okay. I think almost any attachment here should be a good exchange. The main idea with this one is that, whoops, we don't play the farmer's hat. The main idea with this one is that if black can get like this G3, J3 exchange in, there's no Aji left with the bottom group anymore. Like, white doesn't have anything white can do. Plus, black increased the territory by Sente, and white is not alive yet. So that's the main method. And if white goes, for example, something like this Hane, which would be quite aggressive, then now the G3 move is quite easy for black to play. White could cut, but then black could just give Atari and connect, and then the 3 stones in the corner are not long for this world. So, and then if white Hane the outside, this is probably white's strongest resistance. Black is very happy to just simply step back because it's the same as before. Black gets the gain, and it's pretty much a gain in Sente for black. White has to defend somehow, and then black can step away from the position and do the next big thing. So I think for black, extending here just feels a little bit slow to me. But it's very thick in the center, so I can't deny that it's good. Just the way that I think about it is, like, for black, the turn at A, although big, doesn't really have a lot of power against the right at the moment. But it will be a big move later. I think white coming in is necessary evil now. Excuse me, that looks okay.
Let me ask a question here. Go back to white N12. My purpose here, put it down in 12. On top, I see a 2-space gap and a 2-space gap, and I'm thinking, I want to do something there. If I'm going to do something there, then I want some white stones here to run to. Is this, how crazy is that?
On a 1 to 10 scale, like a 7 or 8.
Okay. Okay.
But only because, like I said, it's kind of like black's privilege at any time to play this sort of A, B, C, D idea. So even though there is a gap, whatever you break on the top, black can make back again to stabilize. So you might break an area that's like anywhere between 10 and 15 points, but black is going to make about 8 of those territories back. So it'll be a net gain for white of something in the neighborhood of 5 points, maybe 6.
So locally locally that idea kind of makes sense, but it's more about the fact that because black has the center exchanges.
Yeah, and also the left hand side is just more important right now. It's bigger. So I think the idea later in the game probably makes a bit of sense, but I think right now the left hand side needed to be the priority.
That makes sense. Okay,
Because
good.
black gets super thick, then white ended up having to come in anyway. And so it's like, okay, we made this exchange, but we didn't actually need it. And the correct punishment for black would have been to ignore it entirely. Because if we're saying that the push exchange was not good for white, then it's not good usually because black doesn't have to answer it. The Hane for white in the center, black can just drop down and make an I at N10. And if that group in the middle becomes alive, white loses a lot of white's leverage. So white's not really in a rush to give you 2 eyes with that exchange anyway. Like we could say, okay, maybe what's a good placement? Let's have black jump. Like white could double Hane maybe. But like even in this exchange, it's very hard for white to continue without having a connection in place first. Like if white does anything hyper aggressive at any point, black can just cut and extend, and the whole thing is surrounded. Right. So the Hane for white is just not very powerful, and then for black, the extension was not super useful because the white push was not a good exchange. So I think letting white in either with this move or like this move or anything really, I think white in the game chose this one. White sort of earned that tempo back. Yeah, I think Hane was the sharpest answer. Good job. This is the one that's trying to utilize the fact that white has some weakness here.
Okay,
and
now
white ignored.
I ignored knowing I'd give up the corner, but I was afraid there's so many black stones in the center now. I'm not sure I can survive. So I'll give up the corner and live on top. Up to here, dead even.
Yeah, I think
this
we have
one
to
move,
save.
minus 20 points. This one move, you can't get more purple.
Yeah. So the logic checks out, but I think that we've talked about that fear before.
Yeah.
Now I think we just saved the corner. The burden is on black to kill it, but it's always easier to be the living side. Also, the 2 stones themselves are quite light, so they themselves don't need to live. It's just something here needs to survive. So let's take a look. This will be a good sort of lesson for those watching in chat. What points of leverage does white have in the shape? You know, if we give them a few moments to think about it, then we'll move on. You know, we have A, there's a jump cut area around B. Of course, white's got to fix the bottom first, but there's a nice move that we can cut around B, which can help. There's this gap between the black stone here and here, so we can call this the C area that white can begin running to. And white also has the ability to take a base at D. So there's a lot of different things at white's disposal inside the black area that white can look to try to make a life. And generally, you only need about 3 of them to live comfortably. In this case, I think it would be very, very difficult for black to kill it just on principle. And I think black shouldn't try to kill it. Black should just try to chase it for profit and turn the center into no man's land. I think that would be a more ideal continuation for black.
Right. I knew I knew I was going off the road. I'm going, you know, I've seen the computer do this. I'm going to try it. He got me. Yeah, minus 20 points.
Yeah, this one a bit interesting. So you chose to connect underneath instead of going for the breakthrough, which I guess makes sense.
Because again, I don't have any eyes and I have a weak group on the left.
Yeah. I don't know. I think my inclination is black's double knight's move is still a bit fragile. Like white can play A, white can think about cutting around B once white has thickness towards the center from this group. It feels like this one is the more active way to play. Active does not always mean better, but it's where my propensity leads me to play if I'm white. You know, strong players, they don't like doing what they're told. In fact, most of them can't stand it.
Right.
Yeah, I think here even can just break through. So this is fine. Like white kind of ends up getting that type of thing anyway. So it's like to some degree white needed to do it. Yeah, so white ends up getting out. This is making sense. And then white clamp. Did white have anything stronger than clamp? I think white could think about this one. If black pulls back, then white can Hane. No. This one seems strong, and so probably black has to go forward. And if black goes forward, then white can just Hane out. There's
That's
no
nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So that one might be a little bit cleaner than this. We're sort of arguing the semantics of attack and defense here, because I think even when black extends, white can still play this one. This one is a bit annoying for black, actually. It allows white to get out if black cuts. So for those that are wondering, for example, white can play something like this into this, or white can even just use it to get this Atari exchange. And if black plays like this, there's a double Hane follow-up for white in the future.
Okay.
It's kind of more or less the same. You just do it without the extra forcing, and then George ignored. George, I think at this point, it's a question of what's bigger, spinning a move to the left or running the corner. And I think for black, you just take the corner. This one is guaranteed like money in the bank. And not only that, but it alleviates a lot of the pressure that white would have had for stabilizing with A. It's a very big move. Again, not just because of the territory for those watching, it's the territory plus the impact of the cutting point. In the middle game, it's always important to prioritize moves that have attack, defense, life, death, weak, strong implications.
Because I have to live.
Yeah.
Huge move.
So for black, I think there's nothing more urgent on the board than this.
And I guess also my move isn't forcing, right? I mean, white could probably just play away even, because all white wants to do is make a very light group there anyway.
Like white can just take. And then now all of a sudden, once white captures, black is like in the spot where, okay, how do we follow it up? Because if I play like the natural one, which is like this peep type of thing, and then try to break white's eye space, I mean, I'm only helping white crunch my corner, and I'm not really stopping anything. And if you play something slow, like let's say you play Tiger's Mouth, then white gets the chance to answer your move anyway. And so this A for B being a free exchange for white ends up just being a net loss for black. That 20 points white gave you earlier has disappeared now.
Yeah.
White got that back with one free exchange. So I think there's really nothing better for black than taking the corner profit. When your opponent makes a mistake, and we're going to call C9 a mistake, when your opponent makes a mistake in judgment with a move like C9, you have to capitalize, because if you don't, if they get a chance to get C9 and then fix the mistake later, then oftentimes the mistake move that they made that was originally -20 becomes like +5 after the fact. And then it's like, well, it was a bad move at the moment, but if you don't punish, overplay is better than Tesuji if not properly punished. So as the saying goes anyway.
So how are you saying I should be punishing that move, C9?
You should just be capturing the corner.
Okay.
So like here you started by coming in, but actually there's still nothing bigger for black than going here. This is the only way that C9 becomes a mistake for white. And that comes from recognizing when you play this Hane, you're making a threat. This Hane is a good move because of the liberty threat. So if white ignores the liberty threat, the natural follow-up is to execute the threat that you threatened. Otherwise, why did you play E15 in the first place?
Okay.
At that point, if E15 didn't have a threat, you should have jumped, right? So like this one, we play the Hane because if white ignores, it's not possible for white to block the corner anymore the turn is Sente. Right? And then if like this one is also Sente, this is Sente, and then you can go back and kill the corner. It's 4 liberties to 5. It's a clean capturing race for black.
I think the way that I would have mistakenly looked at it is that if I capture the corner, I'm 100% alive, which weakens white's group on the left, which means that move at C9 was defending an especially weak group.
Yeah, no, here white lost the corner that was originally white's that white kept. And white ends up with a weak group on the top side. And white is still undercut, so C9 is not a perfect base. And white lost 20 points in the corner. And that's really what it boils down to, is white lost 20 points in the corner. Like that switch in territory, because it's going to come in Sente for black, is just profit. It's not even a trade, it's just profit. Like white gave you on a platter 20 points. Here's your handicap. The game was even. I want to make it 3 stones now, you know.
Yeah.
And the only way that happens is if black recognizes white and then graciously accepts the donation. This is a chance where like a point where like strong players always being in the no, I don't want to do what my opponent wants mindset sort of backfires, because here white's saying, I want you to have the corner, but it's actually just good to take the corner. So you always have to evaluate it sort of objectively. There's nothing bigger black can do here than capture, I think. So yeah, so we did all this, and then we get to the point where white didn't play that way. White went like this, and then yeah, so white started with all this moves. This is fine, I think. The thick shape for white to answer, if white wanted to answer, would have been this one. And sort of the merit of this is just it removes the peep, prepares to cut. Black still has to exchange the corner. Like this is still absolutely necessary, especially if white defends the left. But then now white can attack the whole thing. This is where the thickness becomes useful. Black is not alive in the corner anymore. So something like this can be a sharp way forward for white.
Guys, we're just now over an hour, and okay. I have stuff coming up I have to attend to. We can make this a 2-parter.
Sure.
Because we're seeing some good stuff.
Sure.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. 100%.
Okay. Viewers, I hope you'll stay tuned for part 2 next week. Chris, as always, thank you so much.
Yep.
As we're playing this, we're talking about you. We'd need Chris here to know what to do. You know, we're always using your name now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to help as much as I can anyway. I think the last little talking point I'd have is I think white's defense of the center was a bit too submissive. If we're going to play this way, then we have to fight. I know the cut looks scary, but actually the cut is not really working for black. If black comes out, then white can just simply push. And then Hane the corner, I think. Whoops, that's not a Hane. I'm not sure that it's going to be a working fight for black.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
okay,
we
viewers,
can continue part 2 next week.
See you next week.
Say that again? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.